Julia Stolyarenko. I'm thinking Julia Stolyarenko over Luana Carolina. But we were just talking a second ago, and you said you might disagree. Why? I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, they're both the same age, but I think Julia Stolyarenko, she beat the shit out of Molly McCann because Molly McCann has no ground game whatsoever. Against people who have somewhat of a good takedown defense, she doesn't show up. Her only other win is Jessica Rose Clark. She lost to Alexis Davis, Julia Avila, Yana Santos. So literally her two UFC wins are Jessica Rose Clark and Molly McCann. So, and then you take a look at Luana Carolina, 9-4. She has the ability to finish people on the feet. Yeah, she got knocked out once by the spinning elbow from Molly McCann, but I'm going to bet that that's a fluke. And a loss to Joanne Calderwood by split decision is a lot better of a showing. And then win events, Ivana Petrovic, who was 6-0, and Lupita Godinez. So Pauliana Botello as well. So taking a couple of those wins, I think who had the weight miss here? Carolina was above the weight miss. So I know that she has a hard weight cut, but I just think that her time in the UFC, the people that she's fought in the UFC, far outweigh Julia Stolyarenko's. And I haven't seen anything that tells me Julia Stolyarenko is good. You know, you beat Molly McCann, and your other win is Jessica Rose Clark. You know, everybody. So not buying into the hype. And at plus 100, near even, give me Luana Carolina.
Yeah, fair. As like an underdog, I get it. You know, the underdog money's there, and I get your point with the striking advantage for Luana Carolina. But Julia Stolyarenko has the definite grappling advantage here. And Luana Carolina has a hard time getting back up to her feet. I remember it was like a year or two ago, we saw a training video from Luana Carolina, and she was having a hard time doing push-ups. She has a hard time posturing up, and like even when she's in somebody's full guard, she has a hard time getting back to her feet. And Julia Stolyarenko has a really strong guard. I just think the grappling advantage is really there for Julia Stolyarenko, and if she can get a takedown, then fight's over for Luana Carolina. There's also a reason why it's even too, right? Like it's not that clear one way or another, but I'm willing to bank on Julia Stolyarenko because we've seen what she's able to do with lesser grapplers, and Luana Carolina is not really up there in terms of jiu-jitsu and wrestling. So I'm going to go with Julia Stolyarenko on this one. But that was the first of our prelim notable fights. I don't know. You have anything else you want to say about that one?
No, I would just say that I was looking, and she only has one loss, Luana Carolina, by submission. It was to Ariane Lipsky, who has a couple of submission victories. So, I mean, listen, what you're saying is fair enough in the fact that, you know, it's going to be, is Julia Stolyarenko's grappling going to outweigh the striking of Luana Carolina? My bet would be on the fact that Luana Carolina has fought better competition, who have, you know, a decent amount of takedowns. And, you know, since 2020, when she fought Ariane Lipsky, I'm going to say at 30 years old, she's going to improve. And, you know, honestly, it's an either or thing. The people at Tapology far outweigh, agree with you. Near even, I wouldn't put a lot on it, but I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to go against the grain a little bit because it looks like her UFC competition is better than Julia Stolyarenko's. So,
yeah. Like you said, wouldn't throw a whole bunch on it, but yeah, that's the first of our prelim notables.
Women's MMA is a toss-up anyway, so
yeah, exactly. 9 times out of 10, you can bet it to go to a decision, but this one, I think the people are looking for a finish on Tapology, and I have to agree. How about we roll the theme song and get this thing going for real? What do you think?
Yeah, let's
do it.
Let's run it.
It's time!
What's kicking, everybody? We are back for another episode of Pickin Fights. You just saw us break down Julia Stolyarenko versus Luana Carolina. I'm Keith, joined as always by my friend Tom. Tom, how are you tonight, man?
Doing wonderful. Like you said, just saw us break down Julia Stolyarenko, Luana Carolina. I feel like I'm a little bit more with it now. We warmed up and ready to go, ready to fire off some good conversation. Like you said, or I don't know if you said this, you didn't say it on air, but you said a little bit before. Kind of a sneaky good card here. A lot of good matchups, especially the higher up we get on this card. I'm fired up to talk about it. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well, and you're absolutely right. It is a sneaky good card. You know, it's got some deep cuts for the fans. You know, everybody knows Kashmir and Achilles' last stand, but not everybody knows the gallows pole when it comes to Led Zeppelin. And this is one for the fans put together. It's got those deep cuts. And there are some recurring faces too, some people that they tried to build up as stars in the past. What I want to talk about right now, if you want to roll into the prelim notables, how do you feel about that? Because we're on a roll already, baby.
Yeah, keep it going, keep it going. Prelim notables. Let's fire up that little clip.
All right, so I got one I want to talk about, and just because we're riffing, we're talking about people that the UFC built up to be stars, and they didn't really pan out to be stars. Molly Meatball McCann versus Diana Belbita this week. Molly McCann, you might remember, she's like the Robin to Patty Pimblett's Batman. I tried to come up with a Beatles reference there for a second, maybe like I don't know, it doesn't really work out because I think the Beatles were all equals except for Ringo. But yeah, she was like his little buddy, following him around, appeared on like a couple of main card pay-per-views, and had a hype train following her. And that was derailed by who we were just talking about, Julia Stoliarenko, and a hometown favorite, Emily Blanchfield. So, and super looking forward to her career. Great win for her against Molly McCann, almost gave her a spiral fracture. I am going to go with Diana Belbita here. Molly McCann's a hard hitter. We know who she is, but Diana Belbita, in my opinion, is on the up and up, and Molly McCann is slowly sliding. I like the money line here for Diana Belbita quite a bit. She's a heavy favorite. I mean, a heavy underdog, in my opinion. I mean, Tapology has her listed as moderate, but when you get into those +2s in MMA and you feel like somebody has a shot at winning, that's who I'm willing to roll with. And it might be the unpopular pick here. I know a lot of the people at home are rolling with Molly McCann. I was with the popular pick. Now I'm being a little controversial here. But, when you have 2 losses back-to-back in the UFC, bad losses where you basically get manhandled, it's hard to come back from that mentally. Diana Belbita is not on par when it comes to the grappling with Julia Stoliarenko and Blanchfield. However, she's got good fight IQ. Despite the pretty face, she's got some brains back there as well, I think. And Molly McCann can rush in there a little bit. I think if Diana Belbita can withstand the onslaught from Molly McCann within those first couple of minutes, where she comes out of the gate throwing those spinning elbows, spinning back fists, and she does tire herself out. And if Diana Belbita can withstand that, even though she's not the heavier hitter in this fight, she is the better grappler. She's the more intelligent fighter and has the better gas tank of the two. And I think there's potentially a scenario where you could see a Diana Belbita decision victory here. This isn't a guarantee by any means. They are prelim notables, not prelim locks. We stepped away from those. I like Diana Belbita in this fight. I'm not saying it's a lock by any means, but Molly McCann is slipping, and I feel like Diana Belbita, despite being 2-3 over her last 5, her stock is slightly rising higher than Molly McCann's in the UFC. And the intelligence, the cardio, all that stuff is there for her as well. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah. So these girls actually fought. This is Molly McCann, Diana Belbita 2. The first one coming with Molly McCann taking the victory via decision over Diana Belbita. This was back in 2019, back in Boston on UFC on ESPN 6. Right. Dominic Reyes taking on Weidman. So definitely some time. Both of them have gotten older, as happens with time. At the time of the fight, Diana Belbita was just 23 years old and wasn't able to get Molly McCann, wasn't able to expose her on the ground in the way that we saw people do more recently to Molly. Molly kind of beat her up for a couple of rounds. With that being said, I don't think it's going to be quite as dominant of a victory for Molly McCann, but I'm still going to be on Molly to get it done here. Like you said, 2 losses in the UFC is not good. And people have short memories. And we talked about it before we started the show that like people have almost like written Molly McCann off, that once she loses, she's destined to just lose forever now, especially losing in such fashion in the way that she did, getting absolutely annihilated. by Erin Blanchfield right away. And like you said, almost a spiral fracture. And then another armbar submission loss for Julia Stoliarenko, who we just talked about, and he specifically talked about not being that good. So, for Molly McCann, I think it's a real dichotomy for her. She's a stand-up, in-your-face, aggressive fighter. And if you're going to take her down and you're able to get her to the ground, you're probably going to be able to submit her if you have, a decent game. The question is Diana Belbita the second time around, 4 years more experience, a bunch of more UFC fights under her belt? Is she going to be able to get it done? And I'm still going to unfortunately bet on no. I think she may be able to get Molly McCann down a little bit. Molly McCann has a much shorter stature, and Diana Belbita is wiry. At 5'7" and 115 pounds, like she's a wiry, a long fighter for the division. And I think Molly McCann, being short, being stocky, and knowing that submissions and grappling is a no-go for her, she can drill, and really get adept at defending those takedowns. I think Molly McCann is going to defend most of the takedowns. I think she may find herself on her back for a little bit, and at that point, she's going to just be able to hold on to Diana Belbita for long enough to kind of stall and maybe get, find her way back to her feet. I don't have a high degree of confidence that on the ground she's going to have a ton of success, but I'm just going to basically hang my hat on the fact that Molly is, a little bit more of a vet. She has something to prove here, and she's a far better boxer, and she does damage when she wants. She can put people away, which is not a quality shared by a lot of women, female fighters, should I just say, more broadly. So I'm going to go with Molly McCann because of her ability to get it done on the feet, and that she knows that she just can't get taken down. And if she does, she can kind of hold on and stall. I think Diana Belbita will have a harder time stalling per se on the feet. So, minus 250 is a tough line to take, though. So I don't think I would lay money on Molly McCann. I would probably lay money on it going to decision, depending on what that looked like. But there's always the possibility that Molly can knock out Diana, and there's always the possibility that Diana's going to be able to sub Molly. So this one's a real freaking toss-up. For it to be +2 anything, anyway, I think it is crazy. It's a 50-50 fight for me.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. You like it better as a 50-50 fight than Vegas does, clearly. I don't feel like super strongly about Diana Belbita, like I was saying, but like I feel strongly enough about her, and with the money line being what it is, that I would be willing to like throw a little bit, on Diana, maybe like a unit. I got one more I want to talk about, and that is Themba Gorimbo versus Pete Rodriguez.
I'm glad you brought that up.
What'd you say? I
said I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. I don't think that Pete Rodriguez is like super on par with the upper echelon of the UFC. He's not really got a lot of experience under his belt. And what it really comes down to for me, though, is the fact that like Themba Gorimbo is this big time feel good story in the UFC. The Rock bought him a house. He was living with Colby Covington. A lot of people don't know that or don't want to acknowledge it. But Colby did put Themba Gorimbo up from Zimbabwe in like a house or a condo or something. And the guy turned his whole life around by winning a single UFC fight and maybe getting like a performance of the night bonus or something. And Pete Rodriguez, we've seen him be a setup man before. Brought into the UFC, I believe, on short notice to fight Jack Della Maddalena, and got a win over Mike Jackson in his last fight. Not super impressive. Put out Mike Jackson, but it wasn't like a dominant performance. I think it's going to be a Themba Gorimbo victory this week. Minus 300 favorite. Vegas agrees. He's got a great skill set, got a lot of power, and he's a guy that we've actually seen improve. And now that he's got a little bit of money in his pocket and a place to sleep for real, and he's a feel-good story, they're going to build him up. So I'm going with Themba Gorimbo this week. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm taking a look at Pete Rodriguez's record here. Now he has a pretty extensive amateur record, but let's just look at this real quick. You have an extensive amateur record of his first loss comes to a 1-0 guy, then 1-1 or 0-0, should I say? 1-2 gets a win, 4-1 gets a win, 1-0 gets a win, 2-0 gets a loss, 3-0 gets a win, 3-3 gets a win. Decides to go pro after that point. 2-2, 0-1, 2-3, 5-1, 10-2 is where you take that loss on short notice into the UFC for Jack Della Maddalena. So really, really jumping into the deep end there after that level of competition you fought up until that point. So, you got the win over Mike Jackson, 2 canceled bouts against Natan Levy, and then now you have Themba Gorimbo. Themba Gorimbo, obviously, I don't want to say necessarily obviously, but Themba Gorimbo with a very solid record to back up his, he has Takashi Sato, which is not a great win. He spent some time in the cage, lost to AJ Fletcher, has a win over Julio Rodriguez, lost outside of the UFC to Henderson Ferreira. So, but a lot of these guys are 6-0, 4-3, 10-5. I think Themba Gorimbo has at MMA Masters, he has a better overall collective story to his UFC career. Spent obviously more time in the cage. He may have fought I think better opponents over that time, and I think he's a better well-rounded fighter overall. So, like you said, I think Pete Rodriguez is maybe not necessarily UFC caliber. His only win in the UFC is over Mike Jackson, which is questionable at best. So I'm going to go with Themba Gorimbo to get this one done.
Yeah, valid pick. I don't have any more on the prelims that I want to talk about. Do you?
Let's give it a quick peruse. Now, Gilbert Urbina is on the main card. No, nothing. No, actually, I do want to talk about this fight, which I'm going to go with Jamal Pogues at plus 165. Reason being, Thomas Peterson. I mean, both of these guys are big, they're very unfit type of heavyweights. They're the type of guys that beyond the second round, it's really rough looking. He had fought Waldo Cortez Acosta before, lost via punches in the third round. He has a couple ground and pound victories over some guys in LFA, and then got in via key lock in the second round over Chandler Cole. Chandler Cole is not a mountain of a man, not terribly successful in his own right. So level of competition here is not sky high, I guess you could say. And then you have Jamal Pogues, a guy who's had a couple UFC fights up until this point. He's a long fighter, a boxer mainly. He has most recently a loss to Mick Parkin. He has a win over Josh Parisian, and got in off a unanimous decision win over Paulo Renato Jr. This is a guy I believe won on the Contender Series twice. His style is that of just plotting and picking at you with a jab in a right straight. It's kind of like if Sean Strickland was stripped of even a level of excitement in his fights that he has now. Just kind of distill that down, put the guy at heavyweight, and maybe give him an ambient and send him out there. And that's kind of what Jamal Pogues fights like, just a little bit. But I think even that, his ability to get in there, land more punches, and I think he has a little bit better of a gas tank. So I'm going to go with Jamal Pogues here as the plus money underdog to get the win over Thomas Peterson. Like I said, Thomas Peterson, it's his first fight in the UFC. We know how those tend to go. Both of these guys are relatively unfit. Jamal Pogues is a much bigger guy. He hits a little bit harder. His gym is called Cobra Kai. So a bunch of things in the direction of Jamal Pogues for me. So I'm going to take him to get this one done.
I like it. I like your pick. I don't have anything bad to say about it. All right, I'm ready for the main card if you are.
Hell yeah, let's do it.
Alrighty. First up, we got Gilbert Urbina versus Charles Radke. And Gilbert Urbina, alumni at Tough, 2 seasons ago, that Volkanovski coached season of Tough with like Brian Battle and all those guys. Good season, fun season. Gilbert Urbina fell short in the end. I believe he lost to Brian Battle in that. At the end of that, did have some well-known fighters coming up, like he fought Sean Brady in LFA. Last win, a win over Ryan Cochet, last fight in the UFC. Charles Radke only one fight in the UFC, although he did look really good, and he's coming back after about like 3 months, I believe. It's a tough one, and Vegas agrees. Tapology doesn't. I think at plus 140, Vegas isn't like super confident in Gilbert Urbina, and neither am I. I'm neither confident in either one of these guys. But just being that we've seen Gilbert Urbina fall short and Charles Radke is a little bit of an unknown in this. He won his last fight in the UFC by a dominant decision. It makes me a little shaky on it. being where the money line is, this is purely where my bet's going to fall because, both of these guys are willing to throw, and both of these guys have decent enough grappling. Gilbert Urbina couldn't really hang in there with Brian Battle when it came to the grappling, but Brian Battle we're starting to see as, a UFC caliber guy. Gilbert Urbina not super active. Charles Radke has been, or is so far. I think I'm going to go with Charles Radke. We've seen he's got a nice clinch. He's got good dirty boxing. So, and he's going to come out there ferocious. So, I mean, I hope so at least. I'm going to take Charles Radke over Gilbert Urbina. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, so Charles Radke, you're looking at his only fight in the UFC is against Mike Mathetha. That last name makes it sound like you have a lisp. Mike Mathetha. Yeah. Last fight against Mike Mathetha, who I can't not do that now. Didn't get a win in the UFC, had 3 fights in the UFC, lost to Jeremiah Wells via rear naked choke, lost to Orion Koske via decision, and Charles Radke via decision. We talked about Gilbert Urbina coming in there and looking really good against Orion Koske. And, obviously MMA math is not going to be a thing, but styles make fights. And I think Gilbert Urbina being the more well-rounded fighter, or maybe he's not more well-rounded, but I think he's better at his stand-up than Charles Radke is. I think his ability to land precise strikes will get in there. He's a member of the BMF Ranch, which, the Bad Motherfucker Ranch is a uniquely Cowboy Cerrone thing. So, that's always going to sway me in that opinion, that badass attitude. I like Gilbert Urbina a lot. And, obviously that loss to Brian Battle, coming by submission. I just don't think Charles Radke presents as much of a submission threat as Brian Battle did. His only submission professionally is a rear naked choke over Jeremiah Wells. Nope, that's the wrong guy. I'm looking at the wrong thing. Charles Radke, I don't believe he has a ton of submissions. He has 2 wins by submission, rear naked choke over Raheem Forrest, and he has one via triangle choke in his first fight professional. So, he has a couple Darce chokes, or he's got 1 Darce choke as an amateur, but I say amateur like I'm talking about golf. I think ultimately he doesn't present as much of a threat with the submission as Gilbert Urbina has fought in the past. So I think he'll be able to fight off anything coming via submission-wise, via grappling-wise, and I think he has a stronger striking ability to finish the fight. So I'm going with Gilbert Urbina to get this one done. Give it to the RGV bad boy.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I don't hate it. Like I said, I'm not solid one way or the other on this one. Next up, we got, forgive me, Aliashkab Khirgiev versus Mahmoud Muradov. I know how to say that one. We've heard that one before, but Khirgiev, he's a little newer to the UFC. 1 fight, 1 win over Dennis, another name, Tuilui-Lin. But I can't say Tuluin. I don't know, but Tuluin. Anyways, I'm going with not Mahmoud Muradov. I'm going with Aliashkab Khirgiev. Scary guy. He showed in the Contender Series, and he showed against Dennis Tuilui-Lin that he can drop you with his hands, and he's not the type of guy to try and ground and pound you out. He's going to lock up a submission. He's going to out-wrestle you. He'll go for takedowns, but his hands work. He's one of these new breeds of Russians, right? Like Russians knew wrestling. And now we're starting to see Russians that can wrestle, but they can also kickbox really well as well. And that's the type of guy that this is. And Mahmoud Muradov has a couple of UFC fights. He's good. He's floated around like sort of the same, area of the middleweight division in terms of rankings. And it's a step up for Aliashkab. I don't know. I mean, we're going to hear how to say it the right way on the broadcast this week. But yeah, I think he's going to go out there, use his hands against Mahmoud Muradov. Mahmoud Muradov can wrestle really well. He can throw hands, and it's just going to be like whatever area the fight takes place in. I think Khizriev, maybe that's it. Khizriev, he's going to have the advantage no matter where the fight is. So resounding victory, probably going to end up in a submission. Just because I think it's inevitable this fight ends up on the ground. So I think he'll end up wrapping something up and making Mahmoud Muradov tap. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, the only thing I don't agree with was the pronunciation. I would say Aliashkab Khizriev.
He's rough.
I can just hear John Anik and Kizrayev. Like I could hear it coming off his tongue.
It's gonna be Brendan Fitzpatrick this week.
Oh, well, you know what? Maybe it was John Anik in the past.
It might have been. I'm just saying, like, we might hear Brendan Fitzpatrick.
I mean, probably. But listen, I've heard John Anik say so many last names Rayev that maybe that's what's triggering in my brain. But I don't know. I see that, and I see Alyashka Kazrayev. And right as they're talking him up, with the UFC background music, this UFC fighter, like that stuff. So, you said it all. I think he showed, even though he's going to be the smaller guy in there, at 185 pounds, Mahmoud Muradov is, just not had a very successful career. Lost to Gerald Meerschaert by submission. Kyle Barallo, lost to by decision. And then his most recent win 5 months ago against Brian Barberena. Brian Barberena is not a great win to hold, Brian Barberena known for beating up guys who are much his senior and much higher, in terms of legend status than he is, and going and beating him up later on in their career. So, Brian Barberena, he has, I think his wins come with a little bit of an asterisk. So does anyone with win over him. Alishka Kizrayev, I think, as far exceeds Mahmoud Muradov's ground game. So I expect him to take it to the ground and find a submission there, and probably in the first or the second round.
Yeah, I like it. I like Kizrayev, how you said it. I will say, on that note, with John Anik and Brendan Fitzpatrick, I think it is, or Fitzsimmons, whatever, I like him. I like him as a commentator quite a bit. And I hope that, when that day comes, I mean, John Anik was kind of talking about maybe going to the NFL. I hope that when that day comes that they promote Brendan, because he does a lot of behind the scenes UFC stuff, and he's very good with the social media. I've seen broadcasts where people will tweet at him and be like, shout out my friend for his birthday. And he'll be like, and happy birthday, so-and-so. And then they're right back into the fighter. There's that one clip where Michael Bisping's like, and Pedro pushes the pace. And he's like, that was a good alliteration. And he's like, I don't know what that means. He's like, that's when you say a couple of words with the same letter or whatever. Bisping's like, stop saying silly stuff. It's all-time clip. He drives so well with all the fighters. I mean, all the commentators. Well, I guess all the ex-fighters that are commentators, drives very well with them, and funny, upbeat guy. So whenever that day comes, I hope that he, they allow him to step up into that role, because he's good at his job. Maybe he'll see that. That would be cool. Probably not. Anyways, next up, Viviane Araújo versus Natalia Silva, and I'm going with Miss Silva in this fight. She has fought some solid UFC competition, not super active, but her UFC debut, a win over Jasmine Judasevicius, who we saw absolutely dominate 2 weeks ago in Canada, in Toronto. She had a 10-7 on the scorecards, and Natalia Silva beat her. I mean, obviously, since then, Jasmine has gotten so much better. But unbeaten in the UFC, I believe, Natalia Silva. Viviane Araújo kind of slipping a little bit. But just good wins all around from Miss Silva. A couple of finishes. She knocked out or TKO'd Victoria Leonardo, Teresa Bleda. Not super high UFC caliber competition up until her last fight against Andrea Lee. Really good dominant decision win for her. I think it was 3-0. And then you have Viviane Araújo, who slipping a little bit. It's going to be a step up for Natalia Silva, I believe. And that's why the odds are the way they are. The Tapology voting is the way that it is. The grappling advantage is there for Silva. The striking advantage is massively there. She could put people's lights out. So I'm going with Natalia Silva. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, I'm going with Natalia Silva for the same reason. In the battle of the Brazilians here, the 27-year-old has had a better streak thus far, better run in the UFC in terms of victories, in terms of competition. Not necessarily quite the caliber that Viviane Araújo has been fighting. However, the wins don't necessarily, they both have a win over Andrea Lee, Victoria Leonardo by knockout, Teresa Blade by spinning back kick. I mean, you look at these level of finishes for Natalia Silva, And it just screams that she is a fighter who's coming into her own at 27 years old, not even in her prime yet. And with Viviane Araujo sliding, I think I would go to the tiebreaker to the more exciting fighter, the fighter with youth on their side, the fighter who has a better repertoire of strikes and power and finishing ability. So mark me down for Natalia Silva.
This next one I'm torn on. If you have a pick one way or the other, feel free to sway me. But we got Randy Brown versus Muslim Salikov, and I want to hear your argument first before I make mine, if that's okay.
Yeah, no, that's totally fine. Listen, you look at Muslim Salikov, king of Kung Fu, and I think he's just kind of anything but. 3.5 years ago is how far we have to go back to find 5 fights ago, which is a pretty long time for a fighter. Traditionally, you're going to fight 2 to 3 times a year. 3 and 4 is considered active. To go back 3.5 years for 5 fights, that should really be 1.5 to 2 years pending injuries. 3.5 is an extensively long time to go back for a split decision over Elijah Zaleski, another win over Francisco Trinaldo, lost to Jiang Li via knockout, and everyone talks about Jiang Li's power. He has a win over Andre Fiallo via spinning back kicking punches. But, Andre Fiallo is not the guy that he turned out that we once thought he was going to be. So that's a little bit sad. That's over a year ago. And then he, 7 months ago, had a loss to Nicholas Dalby, which, I've seen in a lot of Muslim Salikov's fights. It just seems to come down to point fighting where he's, just looking to win in exchange and not necessarily win the fight. He's looking to win the round and not necessarily finish his opponent. And for those reasons, I like Randy Brown's ability here. He's a long fighter to begin with. He's 6'3", 78 inch reach. So he's going to have the ability to reach Muslim Salikov. Being 33 years old versus a 39 in Muslim Salikov, he's also going to have the speed advantage, aside from the obvious reason why he's going to have the speed advantage.
Yeah, no, of course. I am with you on Randy Brown.
I was pausing for emphasis because we know that almost at any round is going to be faster than Muslim Salikov. But the fact that he's 33 years old versus 39, he has, a little bit more of a fight experience. Actually, 19 plus 4 is 23. He actually has one less fight than Muslim Salikov and a few less decisions. Or actually, no, he has all the same decisions. I don't think Randy Brown is going to put Muslim Salikov away, but being at the longer reach, I think he's going to land more of the exchanges, and I think he's going to be a more aggressive fighter, if that makes sense. He's going to have the ability to control the cage a little bit more, and I like his ability to have stamina and continue to come into his own. I'm going with Randy Brown to get this one done. Yeah,
I like the pick. I mean, I was a little bit torn just because we can see Randy Brown get sloppy every now and then, and Muslim Salikov has, because he's a point fighter, he does have the ability to stay true to his game plan and stick in there. But I'm with you with the Randy Brown. Look at that. That looks like it's from Raging Bull.
Yeah, right.
But I'm with you with Randy Brown. I think you're right about him popping off the jab. I don't think Muslim Salikov's going to go for a takedown at all. So I'm gonna go with Randy Brown as well. I mean that length and everything, and he uses it so well. So Randy Brown for me. You swayed me. I was a little bit torn, but it's I'm glad because I think it's the right pick. Anyways, co-main event: Renato Moicano versus Drew Dober. Renato Moicano going viral 6 times this week for saying stuff on his YouTube page, saying that he doesn't want to fight at the Apex. He would rather fight in front of a crowd. I don't know if that's simply because there's more money that comes with that or if they get paid the same. And he just, I can understand wanting to not fight in the Apex. He's got a smaller octagon and whatnot. But and against a guy like Drew Dober, a smaller octagon doesn't really pan out well for you.
Right.
Drew Dober is going to push the pace from the jump against Renato Moicano. And Renato Moicano is coming in off full camp and everything, so he's going to be healthy. We've seen him take an absolute bludgeoning from guys like RDA in the past and just keep, not keep coming forward, but staying in the fight. So I don't know if Drew Dober is necessarily going to put him out, but he is going to he's going to beat the brakes off of Renato Moicano for, a good minute and a half probably to start the fight. Because Renato doesn't have the best head movement. He doesn't have the best defense when it comes to blocking strikes, but he does have a sick chin. so then it comes down to, does he survive an onslaught from Drew Dober to then go on and, put in work himself, maybe submit Dober? I think I'm going to go with Drew Dober here with the underdog money at plus 120. I mean, it's really just Hanato's chin that gives him an advantage in this fight, in my opinion, is like knowing that he could take those shots, but you can only eat those shots for so long. And like, we've seen him get the snot beat out of him, like the literal snot hanging out of his nose, and picked up and scooped and dropped. And, yeah, he can hang in there, but there's only so much of that you can take over the course of your career. The guy is almost 35. Drew Dober is as well. We've seen Drew Dober get put out, but you have to be like a heavy-duty hitter or clip him with a head kick the way that Matt Frevola did. And we've seen Drew Dober come back from beatings too, like against guys like Terrence McKinney. So I think being that Drew Dober's the dog in this fight, the underdog money being what it is, I like Drew Dober to go out there and get the win this week. He's been at it for a long, long time. His Tapology picture is Strikeforce, Drew Dober, with like a 2000s haircut. The experience is there. I like Drew Dober a lot. I'm a fan. Nice guy. So I'm with Drew Dober this week. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the way that Renato Moicano wins is by submission. And I'm just looking back at the submission victory or the submission losses that are on Drew Dober's career. You have Efrain Escudero back in 2015 via guillotine choke. He has a rear naked choke to Olivier Aubin-Mercier in 2016. Back when I was in freaking high school.
There's one that makes sense. Beneil.
2019 to Beneil.
Yeah.
And in 2021 to Islam. So as he's gotten older and as he's progressed in his career, only the absolute best top echelon cream of the crop are able to submit him. And I just don't know that Renato Moicano, coming off of, I believe, an injury, is going to be that top echelon that's going to submit Drew Dober. And I don't think Renato Moicano, listen, anything can happen, but I'm not betting on the fact that Renato Moicano is going to summon the power of God in order to put Drew Dober away. Now, he was just knocked out 3 months ago, right? He was knocked out by Ricky Glenn. And it was he knocked out Ricky Glenn.
He got knocked out by Frevola.
He got knocked out by Matt Frevola 8 months ago. So even then, to think that lightning is going to strike twice, as Drew Dober gets older in his career, that's more likely. But I don't think this is where we're going to see it here. Like you said, against Renato Moicano, I don't think he's going to summon the power of God to put him away via TKO. I think Drew Dober is going to be in his face and probably win the exchanges on the feet. And I don't know if Renato Moicano is going to be successful in terms of getting the submission. He might take him down once or twice, but again, he's coming off of an injury to his leg, and a Drew Dober plus money. Yeah, give me Drew Dober all day.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, bro. He got clipped by Matt Frevola too. Like, it was a sneaky head kick. Mm-hmm. And I don't see Renato Moicano potentially getting that done this week. Yeah, like you said, submission. That's the only way he does it. You want to kick off this main event for us? We have a question from Doomsday666. He says, Imavov versus Roman. Who do you think will win? Well, Tom, why don't you tell him?
Yeah, this is a tight one. I think Roman Dolidze has had it was kind of like he had like 2 iterations to his career. There was a point where he had taken a lot of time off and then came back. You have a lot of canceled bouts in here. You have a win, a loss early in his career to Trevin Giles, Leonis Darapoli. He's got a win, and he had a bunch of canceled fights. He came back, fought Kyle Dawkins and got a knee in the clinch there. So it's like, I'm still not convinced about him. This decision win against Leonis Darapoli, he didn't look great in, and he was like really gassed by the third round. So, total jury was out on him, bunch of canceled fights, a lot of inactivity. Back in 2022, gets a win over Kyle Dawkins, knocks out Phil Hawes, joined the club. And then punches from back control victory over Jack Hermanson. And Jack Hermanson, you want to talk about a person whose stock is just sliding at the expense of other people. So, listen, I think Roman Dolidze has proven that he is at least solid. But when it came to good competition, Marvin Vettori, he, lost a unanimous decision where Marvin was all over him. So I think he just proved, at least at that point, that against the top level of competition, Roman Dolidze doesn't have. He did go back and forth with Marvin Vettori, and he did put up a better fight than I would think I was expecting him to, but that that wasn't a questionable decision. Marvin Vettori won that fight. I think Roman Dolidze, if he comes out and he's aggressive, and he's willing to stand and bang, almost with the same mentality that he had against Marvin Vettori, I think he's going to have a little bit more success. Nasruddin Imavov, Russian sniper, that's kind of exactly what he is. He's going to stay on the outside. He's going to try and land kicks, accidental clash of heads against Chris Curtis. Lost to Sean Strickland via unanimous decision, but had wins against Edmund Shabazi, Ian Heinisch, and Joaquin Buckley. Those are better times out, but he did have the loss against Phil Hawes, and Phil Hawes lost a majority decision against him. So it's a tight one. I really want to lean at Nasruddin Imavov because he's the younger guy, and they're roughly about the same size. He has a little bit better technique. He's a little bit quicker, and he's a little bit more of like the point fighter that can knock people out. I want to see how many knockouts does he have on his career officially. He's got 5 wins via knockout, 4 wins via submission. And then how many via decision? He's got 3. So you want to talk about, a pretty balanced fighter, someone who can go and do it all. Those, elbows from crucifix over Edmund Shabazian, that's nothing to scoff at. So I think I'm going to lean a little bit toward Nasruddin Imavov because he's got the youth on his side, and the more dynamic finishes. Roman Dolidze, I kind of look at some of his competition. Laureano Staropoli, iffy. Kyle Dawkins, iffy. Phil Hawes, iffy. Win over Jack Hermanson, not quite as iffy, but still a little bit questionable. I guess you could make this a similar argument for Nasruddin Imavov, but I think he's just one little better. I think he's going to have one little better in the exchanges. I could see Roman Dolidze winning it too. I would say probably a decision here. And you know what? I'm kind of now convincing myself Roman Dolidze might win because if he's going to be more active and throwing more punches, landing to the body, and having more ring generalship, I could definitely see him getting the better of it. But then Nasruddin Imavov, if he's throwing and he's backing up, moving and getting out of the way, landing a strike and finishing the flurry of punches, even though Roman Dolidze is going to be landing a bunch more. A lot of times judges will give it to the guy who gets that last shot, and especially if it's a good shot or a cleaner looking shot. And I think that's where Nasruddin Imavov is going to last. So give me Nasruddin Imavov to edge out a decision. I think I probably would bet for this one to go. I want to know what the over under in terms of rounds are. We might be able to get this. Hold on one second.
Probably 3.5.
Yeah, if you go, yeah, I think I would take the over at plus.
Is it 3.5?
112.
Oh, it's all. Yeah. It's okay. They have them for all. Yeah.
3.5
yeah,
is kind of
where the over as well. I think I would take the over as well, but yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna go with Roman Dolidze this week personally. I think that loss against Marvin.
Fight goes to decision is 175, dude.
Plus 175.
Yeah.
It's possible that it could happen, but. I'll tell you why. I think Roman Dolidze could actually finish this fight. And it's because Roman Dolidze is very good at. First of all, I'll tell you why the Marvin Vettori fight doesn't really reflect on Roman Dolidze. I think he was sort of rushed into that fight. Jack Hermanson to Marvin Vettori is a big step up. He went from Jack Hermanson in a 3-round bout, which you can't forget. It was a landmark victory for Roman Dolidze. That's when he had that leg lock on Jack Hermanson, where he had Jack Hermanson's legs hyperextended. I don't know if you remember that necessarily, but he had Jack Hermanson's legs hyperextended. It wasn't just regular back mount. It was very impressive grappling. I think he reversed a heel hook on Hermanson or something. Anyways, it was so impressive because Jack Hermanson was known for his wrestling. That's how he came up until he became a boring striker from the outside. But Roman Dolidze against you see how he has his legs, his one of his legs. Yeah, I'm surprised one of his legs was hyperextended back in there. There's that picture. Yeah, he's got his legs all wrapped up.
Oh yeah.
So that's why he was catapulted into that Marvin Vettori fight, and it was because of how impressive that win over Jack Hermanson was. Because Jack Hermanson has always floated in that top 5, top 10 range in the middleweight division. So I think Roman Dolidze might have even taken that on short notice too. And to go out there and have a win like that and then get propelled into a 5-round main event against a guy like Marvin Vettori, who we know has the most durable chin in the middleweight division. And if you're a jack of all trades, you don't really bode well against Marvin Vettori because he is as well. He's just so much more durable than everyone else. And Roman Dolidze can do it all. He could strike. He could wrestle. So the Marvin Vettori loss doesn't really like reflect as much to me as it maybe would to somebody else going into a 5-round bout against Nasruddin Imavov, because Nasruddin Imavov does not have the wrestling to keep up with Roman Dolidze. If Roman Dolidze chooses to take this to the ground, he's just so tactical. It's like he just takes away your limbs. Guys try to like get back up onto their hands and knees, and he's there swiping out both arms, and people like a Russian necktie, and people are falling flat on their face. He's got tactical wrestling, and he's got good striking as well. We've seen him where like guys that he fights, like Marvin Vettori mixes it up where Marvin Vettori can come down the pipe or Marvin Vettori can stand on the outside. Jack Hermanson likes to stand on the outside and body kick. Roman Dolidze made the adjustments in that fight to go out there and beat him the way that he did in the 3rd round, I believe. Nasruddin Imavov likes to throw stuff down the pipe a little bit more, and that's why he had that clash of headbutts with Chris Curtis. Chris Curtis, a small guy like Nasruddin Imavov rushing in. I don't think that bodes well against a guy like Roman Dolidze, that if he wants to stand outside and strike, he could do that. If he wants to come down the pipe and throw heavy jabs and overhands, he could do that as well. I really do think that he's got like such a solid skill set for the UFC. And the Marvin Vettori loss was just a blip. Marvin Vettori is a great gatekeeper at this point for the middleweight division, if that's the purpose that he's going to serve. And it was a good test against Roman Dolidze, and I think Roman Dolidze is going to come back from that better. He now has 5-round experience. He's going to put it all together eventually. And Roman Dolidze, I mean, you've always said it in the past too, guys that are coming out of Georgia, like he's from Ukraine, but he trains in Georgia. Guys that come out of Georgia are a different breed. Like there's a lot going for Roman Dolidze, not just in this fight, but I think in his future in the UFC. And it starts on Saturday night with a win over Nasruddin Imavov. So with all that being said, I'm going to go with the slight dog, plus 125, Roman Dolidze.
I'm gonna push back slightly and say, like, listen, as cool as that submission style TKO was over Jack Hermanson, and Jack Hermanson does pride himself on being a grappling guy. We've seen Jack Hermanson not show up in a number of grappling situations, especially outside of the cage when it's grappling only bouts and he's losing to guys that you just go, wow, they beat Jack Hermanson. At a certain point, you have to look and go, how good is Jack Hermanson? Especially at this point in his career, maybe we're remembering him to be better than he is in his current stage. That being said, Roman Dolidze, we haven't seen him break out that tactical level of grappling, very much. You got to give him a little bit of a pass against Marvin Vettori, but Marvin Vettori, didn't fall victim to that same type of submission that Jack Hermanson did. And I know it's a different level, but I'm just going to say Nasruddin Imavov. I'm not going to send him up the river as like, oh, he's totally fucked if it comes to a ground game and a submission back and forth with Roman Dolidze, because Roman Dolidze looked really good against Jack Hermanson. So I'm not totally sure who's going to go, because you did make a lot of good points. He is Georgian. He does have a better ground game overall. I'm not going to argue with you there. And that could absolutely win him points, and he can win, time and spend, positive time on the ground and getting the judge's favor there. So I'm going to remain firm in the fact that I think this one's going to go to decision. I'm not totally sure who's going to win. I'm a little bit sided with Imavov, but honestly, after talking to you now, I'm pretty 50-50.
Yeah, I like Roman Dolidze a lot in this one. I really have never, like, Nasruddin Imavov is good, but there's never really been a fight in the UFC where I looked at the guy and said, wow. And that's like the difference maker, the way that you're like, that thing with Jack Hermanson was like impressive. There have been moments where I've said, wow, about Roman Dolidze.
Right.
So that's like a little bit of a difference maker for me here. All right, you want to do our pick rundown and put a bow on it?
Sure. All right, you first.
Yeah, so starting with our prelim notables, I'm going with Julia Stoliarenko over Luana Carolina. I do want to mention while I'm looking at it here, Make sure if you're watching these prelims, check out the Blake Builder versus Zhang Yang Li fight. That's going to be a banger of a featherweight fight. I like Blake Builder a lot. Not enough to take him one way or another. So going with Julia Stoliarenko, Themba Garimbo over Pete Rodriguez, and I'm going to take Diana Belbita over Molly McCann. For the main card, I'm going to go Charles Radke over Gilbert Urbina, Aliaskab Khizriev over Mahmoud Muradov. That sounded a lot better that time than before. Natalia Silva over Vivian Araujo. Randy Brown over Muslim Salikov. Drew Dober over Hanato Money Moicano. Moicano on money. And I'm going with Roman Dolidze over Nasruddin Imavov. What do you got?
I am going with Jamal Pogues over Thomas Peterson. I'm going with Luana Carolina over Julia Stoliarenko. I am going with Themba Gorimbo on Pete Rodriguez over Pete Rodriguez, and I'm going with Molly McCann to get it done over Diana Belbita. We have a good amount of disagreements on this card because I'm going with Gilbert Urbina to get the win over Charles Radke. I agree with you. Aliashkab Khizriev is going to get it done over Mahmoud Muradov. I like Natalia Silva to get it done over Vivian Araujo. Randy Brown over Muslim Salikov. Drew Dober over Hoynato Moicano. And I'm going to deviate. I'm going to go Nasruddin Imavov over Roman Dolidze, though I really expect this one to go to decision. And by expect, I mean slightly more than any other possibility of ending.
I like that. Yeah, I don't hate that. I mean, I definitely like some of the overs in that fight. Just want to thank all you nice people at home for spending your Tuesday night or whatever night you're watching this with us. Thanks for spending that time with us. Tom, thanks for being here. Appreciate it. As always, please remember to like. If you like the video, like it. It helps us out a lot. Leave us a comment. As you can see, we interacted with Mr. Doomsday 666 before. I hope I didn't invoke any sort of demons or curses on
right? Exactly.
by saying that. Follow us on X and Instagram @_PickinWinners. On X, Tom is @PickinFightsTom. I'm @PickinKeith. Make sure you subscribe. Listen to us on Spotify. You can watch us on Spotify. Listen in the car, on your CarPlay, whatever. You can see our cool Nate Diaz logo before he sues us for it. Am I missing anything?
No, that's it.
Okay. Thanks for being here.
No problem. Or
Have a good day.
Are you thanking them? Or are you talking to me?
Everyone. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Have a good night.
Merry Christmas, everyone.